Hello everybody, today we're going to be talking about my personal top 5 most beautiful places that I hiked through on the Appalachian Trail. And like I said, it's just my personal opinion. Obviously the order of this is just pretty subjective, but yeah, we'll get right into the first place. I wanted to put out an honorable mention for the White Mountains in New Hampshire. I feel like for most people in a ranking like this, it might actually be like a lot higher up and maybe like number 2 or 3, maybe even the number 1 spot. For me, it doesn't even make the list because when I was going through there, that 50-60 mile stretch, I didn't even get a single view. It was all just walking through clouds on top of those mountains, and the climbing also sucked and the weather was bad, so wasn't really much beauty there for me to experience. So yeah, just figured I'd say that because I'm sure a lot of people will be wondering why that wouldn't be in the top 5 most beautiful places. So moving on to number 5. All right, coming in at number 5 spot, I'm gonna have the Grayson Highlands, and this is here for just a number of reasons. I mean, Grayson Highlands, if you haven't seen it, you're gonna see some video here, but it's just one of the most beautiful places in the world. And for me, there's a little bit of emotion attached to it as well, because I've been there before. It's one of the first places that I ever got to go backpacking, so it's super cool. It made this list just because of the sheer diversity, I guess you could just say, in terms of the area and the nature, because you're coming right out of Tennessee into Virginia and everything looks the exact same, and then you get to this place where it's just beautiful grasslands, wide open meadows with wild ponies. Such a crazy experience after hiking through a lot of similar looking terrain. You know, the beginning part of the AT is kind of just up and down mountains that all look very similar. So this was one that was super, super cool to kind of experience again on the through hike. You don't go through a very big portion of the park, but the part that you do, it's just absolutely beautiful. Moving on to the number 4 slot. I had a little bit of trouble deciding on the interchangeability of number 3 slot and number 4 slot, but for 4, I ultimately determined that it was going to be Sage's Ravine up in Massachusetts. And this one's here for a similar reason to Grayson Highlands. It's just one of those things where when you see videos of this place, it's like, oh, it's super cool, it's, you know, it looks very interesting, but you might be like, wow, that's an interesting thing to have at the number 4 slot. But just like Grayson Highlands, it comes in an area of the trail where you're in Massachusetts and you're just kind of coming back into the mountains after the flat sections of the trail, you know, Pennsylvania, Connecticut, New York, places like that. And this ravine Sage's Ravine is located in an area just right between these 2 mountains, this very narrow valley with a river running through, as you can see. And it's just absolutely gorgeous, no pun intended. But it's amazing. The wildlife there was cool. I saw a porcupine there. Right before I moved into the ravine is when I saw the porcupine. But just an absolutely beautiful area, full of greenery, more pine greenery than just like a kind of deciduous forest green. But that was nice because at that time period, all there was for about 600 miles was deciduous forests through Pennsylvania, Connecticut, and New York again. And that's also kind of the first place where you start to get the feel that you're moving back into like the remote wilderness. In those urban areas like New York and Connecticut, you can tell when you're in a woods that is kind of like more urban. You know, you can feel when there's a city close by. In this area, it felt more remote, so that was super cool for me. But yeah, Sage's Ravine was absolutely beautiful. All right, moving on to number 3. And this one, like I said, is a little bit kind of interchangeable to number 4. But this is just the Roan Mountain area, including Unaka Mountain, Carter Gap, and the Roan Highlands, all the way up to the 19E Road. And this area is just, I mean, it's absolutely beautiful. You're leaving the last part of North Carolina, moving into Tennessee, and it's just these absolutely beautiful highlands that are grasslands as far as you can see. And the Unaka Mountain right before it, it goes higher than a lot of the mountains in the area, so you kind of feel like you're in this, like, I don't even know how to explain it. It's similar to Sage's Ravine in the sense that there's no pine tree forests anywhere, and then you get on top of this mountain and there's all these pine trees, and it's just absolutely beautiful. The mountain was also just super cool up there because they had all of the hurricane damage, so all these trees were just blown in all these different kind of directions, blown over, sideways, upside down. Looked like something on a different planet. And I thought that was going to be the coolest part of this area. And I got down to where Carter's Gap is, and that's when Roan High started. And you're just going up, and it's like a 30-mile section of just these beautiful wide open grasslands as you're seeing. But yeah, super cool there. Honestly, one of my favorite places on the first half of the trail. Probably my favorite place on the first half of the trail, especially because once you get to the road 19E at the end, there's a super cool hostel that's got a bar in it, and that place is also just amazing. But yeah, Roan High was sweet. At number 2, this might be surprising to a lot of people. I know for a lot of people that I've heard that have hiked the entire trail, this is usually their number 1. And for me, it's just number 2, and I'll explain why. But that would be the hike up to Katahdin. And don't get me wrong, this place is just so absolutely beautiful, and Baxter State Park in general is just breathtaking. As you see, the views here are just kind of, they're unbeaten, and they are just stunning. And the hike itself is super cool too. It's kind of, there's rock scrambling throughout Maine and New Hampshire kind of the entire time, but not like this. This is more rock climbing almost for certain areas of this hike. And also just the emotional value of getting to the end of the hike is super cool. For me, I don't know if you're watching this, if you followed my series on my through hike, then you'd know that at the end of the trail, a couple of people passed away on the mountain just as I got to the Birches campsite right before Katahdin. And so they basically said, hey, you can't summit today, and they basically said, you can't summit today, and we don't know when you're going to be able to summit. They basically said it could be 2 weeks, could be longer. They have no clue. It was basically until they found the bodies of the people that passed. And so that was kind of just such a bummer to not have the continuance of just through hiking right up to the top of Katahdin. I had to go wait in the city of Millinocket for about 4 days. And during those 4 days, I got sick. And so that just sucked. It almost, I won't say it ruined the experience, because climbing Katahdin was just absolutely amazing. And I got to do it with my father. So that was also just super cool. But it made it not as cool, I think, as if I would have just been able to do it just in one continuation. With that being said, it's one of the most beautiful places on the Appalachian Trail. So it was a cool hike. All right, moving on to number 1. And this, again, is just my personal opinion. It's in a little bit of the same area as Katahdin, but it's going to go ahead and be the Bigelow Range, the Bigelow Preserve in general. And it's hard to explain why this is better than Katahdin, in my opinion. I don't have, when you're looking at view comparison and pictures, all of the stuff that I captured on Katahdin compared to the Bigelow Preserve is the same, if not better. The reason I enjoyed the Bigelow Preserve more than Katahdin was because, if you're familiar with the trail, you already know this, but it's the last set of 4,000 feet tall peaks that you have to hike over before you get to Katahdin. In between the Bigelow Preserve and Katahdin, there's the 100-mile wilderness, which is extremely flat, excruciatingly like rooty and buggy and stuff like that. But the week before I did the Bigelow Preserve, going over Saddleback Mountain and the Crocker Mountains and stuff like that, was just the hardest thing that I have ever done in my entire life. Harder than Katahdin hike, harder than any of the about 2,000 miles previous to those 4,000 footers, even the whites. And a lot of that had to do with the weather and being alone and stuff like that. But when I got to the Bigelow Preserve, I had caught up with a couple of thru hikers, or well, they caught up with me, a couple of thru hikers that I had hiked with previously, and we were the only people up there. I was the third person to finish through hiking that year, so that just shows that there wasn't a lot of people up there where I was at that time of year. And the Bigelow Preserve, I feel like, was the most beautiful area of the Appalachian Trail. As you can see, some of those views, the pictures I've showed here, have just been absolutely beautiful. And like I said, the emotional value of knowing I didn't have to do any more climbing for 120 miles up until Katahdin was just amazing. And the weather was amazing that day, and I had people to hike with, so it was just amazing. And that, for me, made it the most beautiful place on the Appalachian Trail, and I think it is as well, personally. But yeah, that was the Bigelow Preserve. That has been my personal top 5 most beautiful places that I hiked through on the Appalachian Trail. Just natural areas. There was a lot of other areas that I enjoyed more, places like hostels and cities and stuff like that. And I'll go over that in future videos. But thank you for tuning into this one, and we will see you in the next one.